Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2. I thought yesterday was absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure today will be also. So the reason I'm standing here and not our wonderful MC is that if he was standing here, you wouldn't get to hear about him because he probably wouldn't talk about himself. So very briefly, I'd like to give you a little bit more detail on Robin Mellon, who those of you who were here yesterday or participated will know is the MC throughout the conference. And so far we know that he's the CEO of Better Sydney. He drives an electric vehicle and he drove down in that vehicle from Sydney and will probably drive back tomorrow, I guess. We don't know a lot more. So here we go. Just a few key points. So Robin is the CEO of Sustainability Advisory Better Sydney. He's also the project manager for the Property Council's Modern Slavery Working Group and Supplier Forum, the New South Wales Program Advisor for Better Building Finance, a member of the International Well Building Institute's Community Advisory, and was a member of the Australian Government's first Modern Slavery Advisory Committee. Robin is the former CEO of Australia's Supply Chain Sustainability School, an industry collaboration providing free sustainability learning resources for companies around the property, construction, and infrastructure sectors in order to improve their supply chains. So I think we can see that Robin is deeply committed to sustainability and responsible business. Thank you for that, Robin. And thank you very much, of course, for being our MC throughout the conference. A huge amount of pre-work has to go into being an MC. We left our hotel at the same time and chatted as we walked down, and I said I thought Robin was doing a great job, and in particular managing very well with a lot of names that may not necessarily have been so familiar and mightn't roll off the tongue that easily. And he said, well, trust me, it took a lot of practice. So a lot of pre-work goes in. So thank you, Robin. Now, yes, let's give him a clap. Now, I'd just like to introduce this morning's first session. And it's a fairly brief session. It's only going to go for about 30 minutes. And for every minute that I speak is one less minute that our special guest will be speaking for. So I am going to be brief. The title that we've given this morning's session is Moving Beyond Incrementalism, Complexities, Unlocking Collaborations and Speaking Out. And I'm going to return to those last two words in just a moment. The session will explore why business leadership on the SDGs is so critical to driving transformative change and unpack the actions of those courageous enough to speak out and how they can influence an entire sector. So it's my enormous privilege to welcome Paul Polman as our special guest here today. Now, I haven't met Paul, although I went close once. Corinne, our head of programs, and Corinne's here somewhere, were at the UN in September 2019, and we heard Paul speak during the General Assembly week. Now, many of you will actually know that week because there was somebody who stole the show. She's a young Swedish girl called Greta Thunberg, and she spoke to all the world leaders during that week. And you will remember her powerful words, I think, when she said, if you don't take action on climate change, my generation will never, ever forgive you. So that was a real privilege to hear Paul speak on that occasion, and of course we're all looking forward to it again this morning. Now, Paul in many ways needs no introduction, but I will just simply run through some of the roles that Paul currently holds. Paul is the co-founder and chair of Imagine, a social venture which mobilises business leaders around tackling climate change and global inequality. Paul is the honorary chair of the International Chamber of Commerce. He is the chair of the B Team and the SED Business School and vice chair of UN Global Compact. Paul was a member of the UN Secretary-General's high-level panel, which developed the SDGs, and continues to be a very active advocate in the push to achieve the SDGs by 2030. As you know, Paul's had a very distinguished career, and many of you will know him from his 10-year tenure as the global CEO of Unilever, driving a very strong agenda of sustainability and responsible business, and demonstrating in an exemplary way what a corporate leader can achieve and what an organisation can achieve as being an example for all other businesses. And I'm sure many of us have been inspired by Paul's work. I know that I certainly have been. There have been times when I've set a direction and a moral compass, and I pushed through for corporate change, and I met roadblocks. Ming talked about that yesterday. What happens when you hit these roadblocks? How do you keep going? And there have been many occasions when I've referred back to Paul and his work and felt inspired and re-energized by that, and was able to try and follow his example as best as I possibly could. So there's an expression in, for those of you who have done a PhD or might be doing a PhD and going down that arduous path, there's an expression which is, you'll be familiar with, which is, you will stand on the shoulders of giants. That means you are there in doing your research to create new knowledge, but you will be standing on the shoulders of those who have gone before you. And I think in many ways we can describe Paul as a giant of the corporate world, of setting an example for all of us of when you have a deep conviction and deep courage, and in Paul's case I would call that moral courage, when you care so deeply about the planet, when you care so deeply about vulnerable people in corporate supply chains, when you care about fairness and equity to the degree that Paul has demonstrated throughout his entire life, then indeed he is a giant and we can all stand on his shoulders. So let me just finish by saying, on behalf of everybody at this conference, Paul, I want to thank you for the way that you've lived your life. I want to thank you for the example you set for all of us. And of course, I want to thank you very much for being a part of our conference today. So if I could hand over to you now, Paul Pullman. Thank you very much.